Welcome to Faith on Tap, a podcast where we go out to the wilds of local breweries and talk to you about thoughts and various topics that are important to all of us. We are at Kinsman Brewing in Southington, Connecticut. I ordered a turkey sandwich and had some chips, and Liz wasn't hungry. So, Liz, how was the sandwich?
I had a quarter of it. I told you. We ate out earlier, and so I said, I just want a little bit. And you were very accommodating. I had a quarter of a sandwich, and it was fine. I like the bread, actually.
Yeah, it was good. It was, Dennis, you had another interesting pizza.
I did. I had the Wakey Wakey. It's a solid go-to. It really is. It's a breakfast thing. Eggs and bacon on a pizza are just...
Oh, bacon on a pizza is awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you had a half a slice. That's all you had.
No, I did good.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about morality in this question. We're going to see if people are going to try answering it. So we're going to be asking, do you have a moral code that you follow? And after that, we hope to ask where did it come from, and I hope we get to a spiritual connotation with that. I'm not sure where we're going to go with that. What do you think your thoughts are and how it would do with the questioning?
I think moral code will come from mom or grandma, or I think it'll be likened to a matriarch in the family.
Right, but we can follow where they get their code from.
Right.
And then hopefully we can get to something deep.
Hopefully.
But this is Connecticut, so...
but it might be, where did grandma get that from? I don't know.
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of young people here, so we might see something different.
Please.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, so your dad, you think it'll be basically my parents and whatever.
I think parents, grandparents will have something to do with it. My grandfather taught me, my grandmother taught me.
And Liz?
I don't know that it's going to go there. I think that people are going to have something more like a groundswell sense of morality. And so it's going to be more like
Society?
a society thing. And they might not put it that way, but I think that's going to be the necessary.
I'm going to say we're going to get a good generic God one. We'll get God. Who's God? Oh, what?
Very hopeful.
Think the
big guy
word
in the
God will
sky.
come in.
Yeah. I'll say God will come in.
I don't think so. Not in a positive way.
All right.
I'm
Not
always-
feeling it
Well, I'm
today.
usually the eternal optimist when we come to these things, so let's see how it goes.
You are.
Kids, do you have like a code of ethics that you live by?
Oh gosh.
A right and wrong.
Yeah. I suppose my code of ethics is I hadn't really thought about it until I had my son, who's 2 now. And my husband and I were talking about what kinds of values we wanted to instill in him. And it was the first time that I had really ever kind of codified that. And it was pretty simple. It was do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anyone and be kind. That's it.
It's very libertarian.
Yeah, and I'm not a libertarian, but I suppose I have that streak in me.
I guess where would that rule set originate from? Why would you have that code of ethics? Why not hurt people if you take advantage of them and benefit from it?
Oh gosh, well, because then I feel like then we wouldn't really live in a society anymore, would we? Everything would sort of break down, and it would be dystopian and apocalyptic.
Do you think there's X many cultures in the world? Do you think this is like a universal truth?
Boy, I've been trying to come to terms with the idea of cultural relativism for a long time. I don't know the answer to that.
That's honest.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, why would you want to have your son to have a knowledge of right and wrong?
I think he'll be happier. I think the ultimate goal that I have for him is for him to be happy, and for him to follow those I don't even want to call them rules, but those guidelines to do whatever he wants as long as he's not hurting anyone, and also
do you have any specific guidelines that would be off limits then? Like specific examples?
I prefer he didn't play football.
That's an interesting
But
morality
can he be
question.
a T-Rex is the big question.
Oh, I see. We're talking about identity.
No, I wasn't. No.
I'm like, I mean, he's
No, I'm not, but I was just like, he's 2, I
he can
figured.
pretend to be a T-Rex,
Yes.
I suppose. I think there's not there's not much that's off limits. I want him to have as broad of a palette to paint with as possible. And I think that should be true for everybody. There are those few boundaries, and they're real boundaries. But beyond that, life should be free. It should be relatively freeing. That's ideally in a perfect world. Anyway,
That's awesome. For a 2-year-old, that's going to mean a lot.
I hope
to be
so.
honest.
We got a runner, so I mean, he's definitely. I do have to rein him in sometimes because he's going to actually hurt himself.
Understood.
Okay. I'm asking you whether you yourself have a code of ethics or a code of morality that you follow yourself personally.
Morality to me feels very relative. And
would you like to murder babies?
Oh, well, no, of course not.
All right. So, well, that's not relative.
Yeah.
I mean, most of society believes that.
Yeah. But morality is a concept that has historically been married to a lot of religious and political and oppressive movements. And what is moral has been used to shame and oppress and ostracize and, disempower other people because they live in ways
if we have morality to be a wrong and a right, do you think there are wrongs and rights?
Sure. Yeah, I think there are basic human wrongs and rights that have been studied through research to be relatively universal. The prohibition against incest has been largely studied to be agreed upon in almost every culture.
And
we also.
Can I ask you? I don't mean to step on you. I didn't mean that. Where do you think that, say, use incest? Why do you think most societies have that code of incest?
We human beings are the super cooperative species. I mean, the reason why we are largely speaking the dominant, species on the planet is because we don't have claws and fangs and we're not huge animals that can fight. So, we learn to cooperate with each other in very small groups. And that was largely through the use of our language and cooperative abilities that got us to a place where, we could work as units. And you can't really work as a team and a unit if you're engaging in what I would consider to be relatively universal, immoral things like for killing people that I know obviously we kill people in wars and things like that. But if we're killing people within our own community and things like that, or stealing or deceiving people within our community that we're meant to be, sort of working collaboratively with, or as you say, incest, these types of things work against the collective good of that particular, community. And very often in evolutionary psychology, we would find that those behaviors would be punished because they work against the betterment of the group. And so I think you see a lot of that shared morality around the world. But I mean, me personally, of course, those things apply. But I also think that I agree with my friend Mel. I think life ought to be, lived as freely as possible, so long as you aren't hurting or deceiving or, holding other people down. And I don't know what else much to say about it.
Let me push back a little bit what you said. I want to see how you respond to this. So you're saying a lot of these moral codes come from back in the day to build up your society, et cetera, et cetera. The act of loving, not the purpose of mating, but the loving others, that can be sacrificial. That doesn't seem like it's a survival mechanism.
In like a masochistic form of love?
In a way, yeah.
Well, I mean, to sacrifice something you desire for someone else to benefit from.
So are you asking if that's what are you asking?
So that type
is that anthropologically consistent in a way?
So you're asking, do I think that it's a universal human trait of loving to be willing to sacrifice things that are of value for the?
I guess what I'm really asking is the code. We have certain codes that we basically have standards of, like not murdering babies, or you mentioned incest.
Yeah.
And I agree with you.
Yeah.
And you're saying, well, evolutionary, it makes sense to not to do those things because it has negative consequences on the tribe.
Yeah.
But I would say, well, love seems true love to somebody where you're sacrificing what your pleasure is for someone else. That doesn't seem to fit the benefit of the tribe. It seems like you're giving up something and not getting anything in return.
There was a psychologist, psychoanalyst by the name of Rollo May, who said that the precondition for loving is the ability to be alone and therefore sort of self-interested. And so one of my philosophies about love, and of course we do make sacrifices where appropriate, but I actually don't know that I would agree with the premise that true, actual, selfless, needless loving requires a sacrifice of the things that are pleasurable to the individual for the sake of the other person. Need-free.
You're right. I probably said that wrong. What if someone, your child is running in front of a train, or someone that you just liked a lot, and you said, "Well, I would rather give my life up for that."
I would say that something like sacrificing one's life for a loved one or for a cause, so to speak, is more related to the human beings, and I would say this is pretty universal or existential, need to make and have some kind of meaning in life. And meaning can be ascribed to social movements or another person, a loved person, a child. And we find time and time again and across all cultures that people are definitely willing to die for the greater good, for the preservation of whatever that meaning is to them.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
Profound. Thank you so much.
All right.
I'm here with Romano. Romano, my name's Dennis. Another question for you tonight is this. Do you live your life by a moral code?
I think I do.
You do? And how or what established that moral code in you?
My parents, my heritage.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well,
especially the heritage part.
Well, you come into this world with a name, and this name has come from somebody else. And if you sully that name, it's not just you. It's everybody connected with you.
Right. Yep.
So I didn't want to do that.
You had a certain amount of pride in your family.
Not just my family.
And respect.
It's just my family, the people I associate with.
Could you say even the people you associate with, have they attributed to the morality that you live by today?
I think so, because I don't hang around with bad people. The people I hang around with and enjoy to spend my time with are generally good people.
Good people. And
Most people are good people, don't get me wrong. But the ones I hang around with are very good people.
So most people are good people. Where do you see the goodness in people in that kind of context where most people...
In adversity, and sometimes in adversity, you see what people rise to be good through the adversity.
I see. So you attribute your kind of moral code to family, mom and dad?
Well, they become the base.
The base. Where did they get their moral code from?
Probably their families as well.
So this is, and I get the Italian family, this is something that's just passed down from generation to generation, kind of a work ethic, life ethic, how you treat people.
One of my pet peeves on how the current world is, the breakdown of the traditional family and family values, so to speak, if you want to call it that, doesn't give people the base they need so they can find their direction in life. So you find people nowadays, not everybody, but some people nowadays don't have direction because they don't have that basis. They, unfortunately.
So the moral compass is kind of off.
Yeah.
They don't have that.
I don't know about the moral compass. I think their personal direction in life.
So what you've taken from your family in a positive sense, do you think that now what this generation is taking from family is in a negative, where they're not having the same, I don't want to say training, but the same values instilled?
Well, it's a different dynamic now. When you were a kid, you went to school, you studied semester of psychology, there are norms. Well, there are no norms anymore. And there's no guidance for how to act as a group. You go into the animal kingdom, everybody has a code in the group, whether you're in a pack or a herd.
Right.
We don't have that anymore. So people are confused and they don't know how to act towards each other. And it's troublesome.
Wow. Do you think if we got back to the basics, to the 20, 30 years ago family model, do you think that can fix
I don't know.
morality
Have that
today?
capacity. It gets to the point, say you're in a workplace and they retire or push out all the senior people.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to guide the junior people? They become their own group and they come up with their own code and they have no connection to the previous generation that worked in that workplace, for better or worse.
I would say for worse.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Wow.
So I don't know if we have a memory of that, enough of a depth of memory of that to go back to that.
Is there any redemption for us?
There's some. And I do a fair bit of reading, a fair bit of research, finding that some people in the younger generation are starting to appreciate the fact that the previous generation screwed things up and they're somewhat more conservative than we were.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time. I very much appreciate it.
Well,
And we're back. Hey, Liz, anything new?
You'll be happy. I'm growing a plant.
Wow. I'm impressed.
I know, right? But we hate each other. But we're still both alive, so progress.
Okay. It's still green. That's good.
I didn't say that.
We didn't. Yeah, there was no admission of green.
And that's with the voice of the Minister of Mercy.
I kind of like that one.
Oh, he likes it.
Minister of Mercy. I've learned mercy in my older years. So.
After over a year of podcasting, I have a feeling I know what you like and what you don't like. So I figured that one I think you're going to like, but I'll try next time to really upset
offend me.
Yeah, I'll do my best. So we asked the question, do you have a code of ethics that you adhere to? Being a Christian podcast, we were trying to figure out if you're going to have a code of ethics or morals, where does that come from? We'll be talking about God or whatever their opinion was. Well, first of all, you, Dennis, you started off, you talked person. He had a view about parents and heritage.
Yes, which I think we discussed going into this, what our thoughts were, how people will respond to this. And I just had a sense where it was going to come from parents. And that's where he believes he had a strong moral code, learned from his parents and even people around him. And I pressed into and asked, where did your parents learn it? And probably from their parents. So it's kind of a heritage thing. Never really entered into God, but I didn't push that far. And in listening back to the interview, I'm like, I should have asked this question. I thought I should have asked that question, but
it didn't seem like he was ready to say that, though. So I don't know. He was very involved with the heritage, the group of people around him, and
he contributed associating with good people. And so, iron sharpens iron, the biblical principle of, good people. So
right.
I get it. But, I should have pressed in at that moment, in hindsight, asked, well, who determines what good is and who gets that?
Right.
Who gets that right to say this is what good is?
Right.
So that my bad.
Well, Liz and I talked to a great couple, Chris and Mel. They were fantastic people. They're a couple of friends.
They were so interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, very intellectual, gave a lot of thought to the questions. They're people that I would like to hang out and have a beer with and just talk. Obviously, we don't see eye to eye on a number of things, but I still respect their opinions very much, very much. And I thought they had some good reasons to believe what they did. So when I started talking to Chris, it's interesting because he's a psychotherapist. And so he had a background in talking to people in all areas. But when we talked about morality, he was first hesitant to talk about that. He goes, I don't know if I really want to talk about that. But then when he started opening up, he said basically he didn't want to attribute morality. He feels uncomfortable talking about it because it was married to religion and just to shame people. And I thought that was interesting. That was his initial view. And I did press him pretty hard. And he very politely kept on responding. And we talked about, like incest. He said, incest is this a morally wrong thing? When I tried to press him, what makes it wrong? Why do all societies feel that way? He didn't exactly answer the question, but he was talking about bad behavior being punished by the group. That's why certain things. And when I pressed him about like sacrificial love in the field of evolution or in the field of society, you're not going to sacrifice your life for someone you might not even know or someone you might know, because that doesn't seem to be really helping anything. And my point, certain things like love is not necessarily an evolutionary trait, but something that was, in my opinion, God-given. And you have any points, Liz, on talking to Chris?
Not to Chris. He was interesting, but he was definitely taking a more, he said, I'm not an anthropologist, but there was still an anthropological bent to what he had to say, more of like,
yeah, I mean, there's no
more of like a societal evolution.
Yeah, there's no question
to that point.
Our worldviews were very different.
Yeah.
He eloquently stated his point.
Oh yeah,
and I thought
he
had good reason and logic behind it. So I have no problems with what he had to say.
Very interesting to listen.
Then we talked to Mel. We want to talk a little bit about the Mel conversation.
Mel was like, I'm not following that. She went on, and she didn't want to follow what Chris had to say, but she went ahead and, her heart and mind were full of lots of good ideas. She has a child, and she wanted to raise her child to be, to raise him up to.
She wanted happy was her term.
Well, yeah, happy, but also, to not give him so many parameters so that he, to restrict him, but to, just enough parameters so that he could do discovery safely. And I said, that sounds kind of libertarian. And she balked a little bit at that, but it was.
No, I understand her view. Basically,
totally.
She wanted the son to just be happy.
Mm-hmm.
They could do anything they wanted except play football.
Yeah.
That was one of the things.
That's right.
If it feels good, do it. Basically, philosophy, as long as you're not hurting anybody. We asked this question, and we're hoping that we'd get some quality answers, and we did. It was really good. And I'd like to I'd like to finish the podcast by talking about an apologetics when we're speaking about God stuff to people. The moral argument is an argument that a lot of people use to support God. And C.S. Lewis, in particular, went to great lengths of going in depth in mere Christianity.
Yeah.
And we had a book study with
I think it was books.
Questions about that to you guys and it's bounce around some ideas. So some people argue that morals arise in societies primarily to promote the survival and continuation of the human species. Do you consider that a reasonable viewpoint?
On the surface, yes.
I was going to say reasonable, yeah.
Yeah. Where do you believe it fails then?
As per usual, I tend to lean towards biology. If you watch other animal groups behave, there are some absolutely reckless and heinous behaviors you'll see in some animal groups. And those behaviors, which are incredibly common, like in dolphins.
It might help to be specific.
Okay, dolphins have a rape culture. Chimps have a murder culture and a war culture. But, those things can tend to be frowned upon in a human culture. Pretty much across the board, rape is not held in high esteem, and war is entered with great care. And it's not.
Your premise is that it's a reasonable viewpoint, but in your view, not a correct one.
The thing is, humans have put parameters around a lot of these behaviors and made them taboo. And you don't see taboo behavior for the most part in other animal cultures. I mean, if anyone says otherwise, please let me know. I'm very open to learning. But as far as I know, taboo behaviors are incredibly common in non-human society.
Even the desire, the surface of morality develops for the common good or the longevity of the tribe or whatever. Why do we have this desire of longevity? Why do we have this desire to survive? I think because inherently we've been created with purpose, and so inherently we have value. There's a genocide that happens in the United States every single year. A lot of cows lose their life for food. Millions of them, chickens are killed, but we don't consider that genocide because genocide is when human beings who have this value that we've placed on them, or it's been inherently given to us, we look at each other as on a different level, a different scale, and that value is given to us, I believe, by our Creator. We've been made in the image of God,
Mhm.
and therefore inherently we have value, self-worth, and there is a instinct in our DNA to then protect that.
Yeah, I would go even further and say that I would think it's very possible that God could have put into humans the natural processes to instill morals, institution. So just the idea that during the creation, there's some morals, have at it. But I think it becomes insufficient when you start talking about things besides like survival mechanisms like holiness, justice, eternal life. Now we're at a different level. I think it's a reasonable explanation with a worldview of a non-God. But I think if we use the worldview of God, I think it's more common sense, it's more logic and less flawed. On that end, I'm going to be using some of the statements from C.S. Lewis in his book Mere Christianity about the moral law. He considered this a very strong argument for the belief in God. His first statement is that there is a universal moral law. In other words, when people say, that's not fair, or you promised, well, it's universal. That seems pretty objective. If you believe that an injustice was done to you, why would there be an injustice? Why if there's no moral law, then it's just whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
We constantly believe that certain things are just not fair, or, well, if you made a promise, then of course you're going to abide by it. So I guess the question I have then would be, when someone says it's not fair, where is he basing the fairness on?
Well, I think it's interesting. They do studies of fairness with very small children, toddlers. And fairness is something that seems almost inherent in even 18-month-old children or younger. They already know what's fair and unfair. And it's not like they've been sitting around in philosophy classes. They've been living with their parents who adore them more than anything. Yet they know what's fair and unfair. They will share a cookie with a family member because the other one didn't get a cookie. They know. It seems inherent.
I believe from a very young age, they base it on selfishness. I didn't get a piece of cookie, so it's not fair. I should have a piece of cookie because, and you can fill in the blank of fairness could be predicated on a selfish motive.
But you can look at it from the outside view. If you saw someone from afar do something, maybe cut off someone in a car, and you're just watching it, and you can say, oh, that's not right. That's not fair for them to do that. You don't have any skin in the game, yet you still think that's unfair.
And so there is a moral code of fairness, of right and wrong.
So again, the question
that comes from God.
Yeah.
I mean, because if it didn't, then fairness would be subjective.
Yes. Relative. Yeah. Exactly.
Just whatever you think is fair, and
which is actually the second point, which is a good lead on, that moral law is objective and known to all. The idea that even those who claim morality as relative, they betray themselves by complaining they've been treated unfairly, right? Relativists protesting an unfair grade or someone cutting in front of them, they would say, that's not right because it should be objective and everyone knows it. Most cultures I know anyways, there might be some strange thing. In specifically, if we could read Romans 2:14 and 15.
For when Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do what the law requires, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts accuse or even excuse them.
Based upon that scripture, explain why even relativists would protest unfair treatment. Have you ever seen this in real life? People act that way when they may not believe in God, or they might be relativistic in nature. But all of a sudden, when it affects them, they see that's not fair and they would object to it. They believe that there's some standard somehow, even though it's relative. Where does standard come from, I guess? I think this is kind of related to it. I was thinking of the story that Johnny Erickson gave once. She said that, suppose someone just randomly one week put $100 bill in your mailbox. And you go, oh, this is great. This is awesome. Next week, $100 bill is in your mailbox. And in the preceding next 10 weeks, on Monday, you got the $100 bill in the mailbox. Now, say after that, the next week, you didn't get that, but your neighbor gets the $100 bill. Would you all say, wait, that's not fair? I was getting it, and now she's getting it. That's not fair. It's like, well, first of all, yeah, we're talking about what we consider fair and what we don't consider fair. I think even as Christians, we can have a problem with, we're not too objective sometimes when it comes to things that we don't benefit from.
Right. And that kind of goes back to that idea of sometimes fairness is defined by how it affects me.
Right.
And if we looked at fairness from a biblical perspective, we would probably look to, I don't know, I might be making a mistake in saying this, but fairness from a biblical perspective is outward facing. God says, come alongside the orphan and the widow. There's a fairness that isn't based upon how it affects me, but how God has then introduced me to what fairness looks like, how I'm supposed to act.
I think what C.S. Lewis was trying to get at, in order for there to be fair, that must mean there's unfair. And who set up these rules? Why is there a fair and an unfair? Where did this come from? All of us believe that there is this version of right and wrong. And it's really, to explain it by just societal norms, it doesn't really float all as we go along with his topics. In fact, the next one is humans universally fail to keep the law. So we all break moral laws at times. Lewis calls us lawbreakers or sinners, yet we make excuses, justifications, which again just affirm the law's existence. We say, yeah, it's wrong, but I had a good reason why. The point is, we realize that we broke the law. So again, it breaks down to, well, what's this law from? Why is there a law? Why do we believe that there's a law at all? And I guess we can use Romans 3:23, for we all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And I can ask you this question: since we all break the moral laws and yet make excuses, how does this point to us to our need for Christ's grace?
Well, it depends who you ask. I mean,
I'm asking you.
I haven't killed anyone. And sometimes people are lured into believing that's all it takes. I don't steal big things from the company, but, I'll take the occasional pen or, stapler. When you look at God, you're looking at perfection. And so perfection only can come into his presence.
Well, I mean, so they're justifying it's just another way of justifying something that they know is wrong.
Right.
And C.S. Lewis would say, well, why are you objecting so much? Why are you protesting so much that there is this wrong? There must be a right if you feel there's a wrong. Why do we feel this? Even through a good justification, we get that way.
Well, and it comes back down to me. We justify our wrong behavior out of, gee, officer, I know the speed limit is 25, but, I really think 40 is a better speed limit. No.
Yeah, good luck with that.
It might be more comfortable, but the law is the law.
It could be a stupid man. If it's a man-made law, it could be a stupid law.
It could, but we're still called to obey those laws.
Well, what about the inherent laws, like the inherent law that incest is bad? Someone who is not on the Christian spectrum going to address something like that, it seems pretty indelible.
Even murder. I mean, murder is murder, and it's kind of a universal. You shouldn't kill people unless you're an Aborigine somewhere and you eat them afterwards, I guess. But even then, those people are violent. They're not like, come join us for dinner. And on that note,
and now we have the last argument that C.S. Lewis has. And this is the conclusion after based on everything, that the moral law requires a transcendent source. He says that since the moral law is not invented by us, it must come from something beyond our material universe, a mind or a lawgiver with preferences for good over evil. And Lewis compares it to like receiving letters that imply a sender, So in a purely materialistic world, morals would be accidental byproducts of evolution, but they're demanding oughts, like I ought to do that or you ought to do that, but their demanding oughts quality suggest purpose. And I think that's the key. That the only purpose is a key, I think, to all of this. So thus the best explanation is God, who is the source of the law, much like an artist directing a masterpiece. So the question I have for you then, based upon that, so if this ought of morality can't be fully explained by evolution or society, how does seeing God as the lawgiver change our view of sacrificial love? There's no way I'm going to advance my society by killing myself or laying my life out for someone.
Right. Or that's just,
especially as someone who's quote unquote lesser than me.
That's just a primal human function of survival.
Yeah, right.
You're not going to, well, since God is love, it's a foundational stone, I would think, to sacrifice oneself is not normal.
Is there anyone in the Bible that, I'm trying to think, is there anyone in the Bible that sacrificed himself for others that don't deserve it?
Stephen.
No, well, maybe Stephen. I was thinking of someone else, maybe.
Yeah.
With
Jesus.
There you go. There we go. I mean,
we can go Christianese straight up.
Since it's a Christian podcast, I don't see a problem with that. But is that not the ultimate of sacrificial love? Because we certainly don't deserve it.
Yes. I mean, well, Jesus, to lay down one's life for their friend. I mean, the ultimate of sacrificial love is to lay down your life for a friend.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Could be in the physical, could be daily, could be serving someone, could be whatever it is.
But to lay your life down, as Jesus did, who was perfect, never sinned, for all of us reprobates.
Big word.
Who don't deserve it because we have failed him time and time again. Yet he sacrificed. That was sacrificial love to the nth degree. And that was his moral code. And that's something I think we should look at when we treat others, when we look at our Christian walk. Where do we draw the line in our moral code with others? Do we do it just at family? Do we go beyond the family? But whatever the point is, God is in control of that. So I guess in conclusion, anyone have any comments about how God's law and the moral code, how that fits into everyday life?
Well, yeah, it's just being kind. You can start with that basic principle of love is patient, love is kind. God gave us that definition, that morality of love. And if we would just be kinder to one another, that would be a great foot in the door.
Excellent. There's our podcast. Have a great evening. Tune in next episode when you'll hear Dennis say,
the vast majority of people here have thought more about UFOs in the last week than they have about God.